one folding chair and set it out on a 50-foot stage. He said, give me one more vote and we can have some of these changes. And you've got the same thing. I just want you to have that sense that in some areas you don't beat your head against the wall trying to get legislation done if you don't have the votes. And that's the situation that Eric has been. He's addressed things that he can deal with, but now he's moving into a leadership position, and he states publicly, step 2 will be cutting spending as much as we can, following Christie and McDonald's lead. We'll try to rein in the side of the bureaucracy. We will bring federal pay scales that have been so exaggerated into line with market rates. Canada also hopes to eliminate whole programs and departments by putting sunset provisions into law. Again, it's really hard to get enough support to eliminate a program. You know, everybody says that program serves somebody, and they want to keep it in place. But perhaps with a sunset provision, you can get rid of it. The mission, why would you want a federal program to exist if, number 1, it's not executing its mission, and number 2, if the mission is not valid? He cites 17 duplicative education programs and federal technology grants. So Eric Cantor is going public with cuts, spending cuts.
First of all, I'd like to point out Eric Cantor has been in House leadership in the majority before. He was the deputy whip, and he was in that position beginning in his second term in Congress, and after the 2002 election. Second, you want to save the government money. Rick also does. And the way he wants to do that is with one of our campaign slogans, which you'll see right on our yard signs: end corporate welfare. There shouldn't be bigger incentives for shipping jobs overseas and creating jobs overseas than for creating jobs right here in the United States. Rick loves McDonald's. He goes to McDonald's every single day. He believes that, at least during the campaign he does, he supports McDonald's, thinks it's a story of a fabulous American business, one of the great American success stories. But he doesn't want his tax dollars going to pay for McDonald's overseas advertising budgets, which right now it does through tax credits for big business. There has been there's been this idea that somehow we're against the rich. And, Rick is not personally against the rich, I'm not personally against the rich, and I can't speak for other Democrats, okay? But I will say that, tax structures that are good enough for small business should be good enough for big business and big corporations. And according to the Republican leadership, apparently it's not. Because the Forbes 500, the 500 biggest corporations in America, almost to every single one, they pay no tax, okay? That's not, as individuals we can't do that, when we're small business people we can't do that, and I finally just want to use my remaining 15 seconds or so to say that, again, I think Mr. Bayne is a little bit misguided when he says that we're somehow against the rich. I think that markets work well. There's a reason for markets, and we should trust them and follow them. I personally in September 2008 lost the better part of $100,000. Well, I exposed myself to the risk. I take responsibility for that. Rick lost money in the stock market too at a time, and that does not mean that fat cats on Wall Street deserve bailouts that small businesses should not be eligible for. You want to save money and corporate welfare.
Mr. Manifold, next question is for you. Would you vote to repeal the 17th Amendment?
The 17th Amendment.
17th Amendment. I am at a loss for what the 17th Amendment is.
Income tax.
Income tax.
Come on.
I'll trust you. Eric is promoting and would like to see a flat tax. Again, politically, we're a long ways from repealing the income tax. If Floyd can continue to generate support, I personally would like to see a sales tax and eliminate that, but right now he's promoting a flat tax.
You know what? I'm gonna
Is that wrong?
Let him go again. The 16th Amendment is the text.
I
17th
think
Amendment.
right from what I read
17th
here.
Amendment is where we used to elect, we used to have the state legislature select their senators, now we vote for them.
Yeah.
Let me just read you an excerpt here from what we've got. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. And that's sort of an
So
excerpt.
why don't we let Todd go again here?
I think so. I think so.
So you're referring to the fact that originally the states, legislators elected the senators
Rather than direct.
Yeah,
rather than general population.
let me read the whole thing, and it may put some of it in perspective. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue with rights of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be so construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution. You're on your own.
I think the founding fathers did it for a reason, and I support that. Personally, Eric Cantor is like-minded, but I've never heard him address the issue.
It's a question I got. It was my responsibility to read it.
Am I up next or Floyd?
Pardon, you're next.
Okay. Well, I've got to say I admire the Tea Party for really looking at, you know, the founding documents of our government and taking them seriously, because this hadn't been a campaign issue that anyone had brought up to me before tonight. You know, I think the system that we have for electing our senators right now is working fine. I think it works to have the people vote, have a statewide referendum on United States senators, and I think that you know, there's a quote I like. If you go to the Jefferson Memorial, there's a quote that I like from Thomas Jefferson in there. What he says, I'm going to have to paraphrase it. He says, in effect, you know, for government not to change and grow over, and not to change with the times, would as you know, society changes and people, you know, the base of human knowledge changes, would be no different than for a grown man to wear the clothes of his boyhood, and that doesn't mean that we should shirk our founding documents. We have to hold them sacred. But I think what it does mean is you follow the processes of government. And, you know, there are procedures for changing the way that we function in our government, and they involve constitutional amendments. They involve the balance of power between the federal government and the state governments, and between the 3 branches of government. And I think as long as we're working within that system, we're doing okay. This isn't a campaign issue that we've had to deal with before, so I'm not necessarily speaking for Rick on this, but I think he's pretty happy with the way that election of senators in Virginia works.
Yes, I would repeal it. I think the genius of this document is that it transcends time and technology. It addresses the human animal. It addresses the propensity for governments to become tyrannies unless they're kept in check. And so it provides those checks and balances. Now, the key is you have to have good people in office who are willing to adhere to this document. And we know throughout the history of this country there have been times when this document has been usurped, as is the case now. And I think if we repeal the 17th Amendment and put it back to where the senators that represent our state are selected by our state legislature, then we have a closer eye on them. The legislature is more responsive to us and our desires, and they're going to select people who are going to do what's best for the state and its citizens as opposed to their party and getting reelected.
Mr. Umama, it's your turn to start. What is your position on earmarks?